What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode here of the BlockHash Podcast, your number one resource for all that is happening across the emerging tech space. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. Today, I'm joined by another wonderful guest, Tim Lewis, co-founder of Tea, here to talk about Tea and their token launch and a number of other things on their roadmap, what they're doing here in 2025, the problems they're solving, the solutions they're creating. Tim, welcome to the show, man. Pleasure to have you here. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Excited. We just passed the 24-hour mark on our token pre-sale on CoinList. So, absolutely crushed that. We have a great community. So you've got me on a really good day.
Awesome. Yeah, plenty for us to talk about today and to dive into. Before we do, to kickstart the episode, would love to know a bit more about yourself. If you don't mind telling us a bit about your background. You told me a little bit prior to jumping on the recording, but for the people, like, how did you get your start in this space? What was like your initial inception point and inspired you to want to be in Web3? And then how did that eventually kind of lead yourself to Tea?
I'm a lifelong computer, nerd, engineer, developer, hacker. Grew up in the 80s, early 90s, working on different things. I found cryptography, 91, 92, right when PGP came out. Was fascinated by it. Was a big part of IRC and run BBS is all a big part of like my growing up and growing into the engineer and developer that I am. Took that path into a career that was based in cryptography, based in security and architecture, mostly for big banks. Worked for a number of the top 10 banks in the world, designing and architecting usually fixed protocol routing networks for exchanges and trading, with working on primarily data expediency, then implementing a lot of FPGA expedient trading systems and black box systems. And I've loved tinkering with networks and access and security and subverting it and protecting it, and it's just the fascination of all that. But I grew up on a big farm in the middle of America. Had a couple of gold bug uncles talking about the destruction of the Fed and why the Fed was evil, and the experience about what our monetary system was, and having a useful distrust in some powers that be, to be able to think about things a little bit differently. And so, I had seen different digital assets during the 90s, Flues and a number of other different projects, and seeing the way that this was growing up, seeing it all come together. I first learned about Bitcoin or heard about Bitcoin in 2010, before the Slashdot article, before dollar parity. Didn't see it as anything really different. At the time, I was working for an offshoot of Société Générale, and what I thought working on this in the center of the financial world, thinking that we had so many systems figured out, and I didn't understand Byzantine fault tolerance, I think, at that moment. And I think that the moment, if I had to describe the moment that I really kind of fell into what, this could be, was, understanding Byzantine fault tolerance, what that meant, what that elegance was in that solution. So, being such a huge fan of decentralization, like finding myself to be and understanding what it is was great. And then, but even further, as people started talking about colored coins and thinking about these different types of assets could exist on these networks, and then as as Vitalik started to talk about this world computer, and the different implementations of running applications on top of these networks, just enthralled, in the 2012, 2013 peak of things. And then as things started moving, the Olympic network of Ethereum was a lot of fun and very interesting, and a great community. It felt like the 90s IRC type communities, and people were really getting together, exchanging ideas and knowledge. I love that. And I was able to, in the 2015, 2016 Ethereum kind of movement early on, I was able to really just focus on, what that was and how I wanted to be a part of it. Helped a bunch of projects early on understanding launches, in the 2016, 2017 era, and understanding, tokenomics, guessing at tokenomics, I think is a more appropriate term for the time. And just stuck with it. I founded a hedge fund in the space called Ikigai Asset Management with a couple of friends, Travis Kling and Anthony Etman, late 2017, early 2018. And then I founded a developers DAO in 2021. We ended up giving up over 15 million euros in distributed value to developers, open source developers. So I've always had a love for all things technology, and really love the path that my early experience with cryptography has led out to where I am now at the intersection, and my love for development. So happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. And then, what was the inspiration behind Tea in particular? Was it your previous work around open source software development that kind of inspired that? Because I know that's a big focus for Tea.
Yeah, so I read the paper. I think it was more of a paper, The Cathedral and the Bazaar, in the late '90s, and kind of fell in love with the idea of the different distributions and open source. And I was running Linux-based operating systems throughout the '90s and into the 2000s, and loved where that was going. But I was in a really corporate job. I didn't really have it wasn't, my time wasn't spent on that. And I actually had met Max Howell, my co-founder, in late 2012, early 2013. He was at really the height of his experience with Homebrew. At that time, it had been the most contributed repository on GitHub for about 3 years at that time. Right, it was really this package manager for OS X that brought in so many developers and made possible this a style of development that has persisted. And he just made that a popular ecosystem. And he didn't fall immediately into what was going on in Bitcoin. That wasn't I think the security side, kind of the clunkiness of it all, early on, wasn't interesting. And then as we became better friends, started working together on things, I would have conversations with him even about like Doge and, then Ethereum. And, it was never either going to be the next Bitcoin or wasn't, what was it doing anyway? We don't need dog coins in the world. Right. So, it was my experience with him, as I also found like the breakout and like the kind of the ability, the freedom to be working on things, that was like always a disappointment that I couldn't get him into working on what is, what we refer to now as Web3, blockchain back then. His abilities and the things that he did for the world are incredible and amazing. Like Homebrew was, such a tool that it enabled hundreds of millions of developers. It enabled for hundreds of billions of dollars of value created on top of, parts of the system that he made easier. But seeing that, he wasn't financially rewarded for that and couldn't make his own choices in how to, spend his time working on that software that was benefiting so many, he was receiving so little that he always had to go to like really, grind style contract work to make sure that he was keeping the lights on. Right. And so, I had tried with different things. Really, the DAO was the first attempt, the developers DAO, DevX DAO was the first attempt to try to figure out a solution for, how do we properly incentivize open source development? But DAOs are hard. DAOs are clunky. It was fun, but, wanted to go at it a different way. I had gotten a grant to Max to have him write a paper about what he might do differently with Homebrew, considering Web3. And this was in 2021, kind of this DeFi summertime where he piqued his interest again and was interested at that point. So, he wrote this paper, and, it's kind of some of the basis of us, coming together and trying to figure out a solution. So end of 2021, we really came together and we started formalizing some of the thoughts. Again, it was always rooted in initially, how do we reward the dependencies? So how do we reward the deep part of the dependency graph and make sure that the infrastructure of the internet and these protocols that we've all come to know and love get rewarded, get some value, and that it doesn't have to look like donation. What is the way that we can do that? So we started off with that in 2021, and we've been working on this now for about 4 years. So we think we've got some good ideas and ready to get some of them out in the public and implemented, and have others join us for working on it.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I was going to ask, like, how is T kind of aiming to power, the future of open source software, and like how you guys kind of came to a solution to solve this kind of issue around open sourcing software development, and for developers to like include them, incentivize them, to bring them in, because I know that can be a very convoluted thing.
So definitely, right? But open source is many different things to many different people. Like it's like one of those. I always say that decentralized is a trigger word, right? Because it just means so many different things to so many different individuals, right? But it's the same for open source. And one of my common phrases these days is like, this is not Stallman's open source. This ain't your grandpa's open source. Right? We have to kind of change this idea of what's okay, what's not. What does it all need to be FOSS? Is commercial open source okay? In some ways it should be, and we should demand almost all things that we run on any operating system to be open source. We need that validation in a world of the tsunami of apps that we're about to go get, applications for all things. It's there's not a single solution. This is like I wouldn't want to say it's like cancer, but there are so many different things that you have to be looking at to solve. So what we wanted to initially pick was one thing, and have one thing done well. The first thing that we did pick is this dependency graph. So we have amongst many different package managers, we have this global dependency graph that we're continuing to revise and run openly, that can rank dependencies. And it doesn't solve for a lot of mono repos. It doesn't solve for a lot of consumer at the top based applications, but it's a great place to start. And so we ran that, and we've run that, and we've got a good solution for what that is. The other parts of this. So what I wanted to attack, instead of just having this, what we call that CHI, this kind of database now, Oracle later ranking. There's other things that we can rank as well. We can rank our next thing that we're working on is the protocol graph. So we're gonna start at the different standards boards, like your W3C, like your IETF. We're gonna then look at all the spec sheets that have been approved by them, and be able to rank kind of specs along the way. So again, these things might not have been popping up in a dependency graph, but if this is the an issue that will solve for, like, if Ethereum Foundation has an active spec, the things that it call out, like libp2p, this is one of the big types of angles, or the types of softwares that protocol graph would hopefully solve for. But there's other things that need to be solved too. Donations are difficult even to open sources. Open source gets about $1.8 billion of donations a year, not nearly as much as it should. But also it's usually a popularity game. There's not a really way to understand even your container or your network to, what should I be delivering value to? What do I use? What do I need to support? So making that easier, SBOM integration for being able to understand your kind of open source tooling that you use to be able to create a contract that's useful for you to be able to distribute value to. But then again, you have this like chicken and egg situation. Like, if you require all these developers to sign up for your system, it's not useful until they all do. And it's difficult to get them to come over. So this was an issue that we had been facing early on. It's like, oh, everyone's got to register. Well, part of our pre-compile, we're using other elliptical curves. So the OpenPGP, GPG curves, we're able to validate, and we can go use the signatures for execution of transactions in our on our blockchain for certain things. So the GPG addresses and PGP addresses and SSH addresses that people have been signing with now for 30 years, you might not want to have those as the key that holds your vault, but you being able to validate that ownership of that key in certain times, might help us with provenance, might also help open source developers be more inclined to sign, right? So making sure that they're having proper, methodologies of rotating keys. And, if these things all of a sudden are more than just a checkbox, that was a thing that only about 8% of people were doing anyway, right? If it becomes more of an address that, what I can do in the donation side is when I look at a repository, I can extract the commits that have gone into that repository by signatures. So those that are signed, I can then send a value out to be distributed to those signatures. So these are GPG addresses and our reward structure to be able to send signatures without the repositories themselves having to register with our platform. So I think it'll make it easier for enterprises to give properly. And we've got methods too, because of those that may or may not want to get in. Like a developer that gets a notification that that an enterprise has donated a certain value to them, oftentimes these values will be in things like USDC, and you can complain all you want about what, Dogecoin is or the other things is that you might not understand, but many developers, I think, around the world understand things like USDC, and hopefully they'll come to understand the other values for these repositories. And creating these economic systems and these benefits. One of the things that I'm excited about is our bounty system, which allows individuals, whether the UN repository or someone else is creating an issue on your repository, to create a incentive-based issue. So you create basically an escrow contract on an issue with certain parameters to have been completed. If this is accepted by the maintainer gets some sort of split with this by contract. There's generalized ones with whoever completes the work. If the contributor is external, they want to complete the work, then the work is verified and validated on chain using the GPG key mechanism in our precompile to go release the funds on the success of the pull request, right? So it's kind of taking someone out of that loop, allowing it to work on, Git, GitHub, GitLab, et cetera, hopefully we'll create another layer of incentive. That incentive can be in USD if you want. Enterprises can go push those things, but, you as a repository owner will experiment with, these repositories that have registered will be able to validate the ownership of the repository, and then they will be able to create a multi-key treasury. So you can have a DAO mechanisms on top of these repositories, and they can decide in any way they want to use them. It might just be an experiment, a community asset, but then they can use those for their bounty rewards as well. The people in their community might value them. They might decide to create and use them for other things. So experiments in economy. And hopefully those that come and experiment on Tea, the transactions they generate help propel the wheel. It helps, encourage other people to build and helps value and continue to flow value into repositories registered and the other transactions that occur.
Nice. I like that. And I like that there's a little bit of variation to incentivization as well for devs. Because everyone likes different things and is enticed by different things. If a dev is watching this and they're like, oh shit, I want to contribute, like, do they just go to like Tea and set up an account, or like what's kind of that process for them to get involved?
Well, so there's kind of two separate things. We're still running this rewards protocol on now our layer 2 network. So if you're a dev, depends on what your experience and what you're trying to do. The layer 2 network itself is permissionless. You'll be able to put, and we've got people running different experiments, bridging over a bunch of great developers. Hopefully will cause this other explosion in utilizing the network, creating contracts, creating fun things on top of it. So there is that experience, and separately the Tea rewards experience and the governance experience, et cetera. So going to Tea.xyz, we are still on testnet. So we've run a bunch of tests. We've run a bunch of test nets on a bunch of different networks. We were on Base, then we launched our own Assam testnet, which was basically a vanilla OpStack testnet. That we ran our rewards protocol on top in January. That thing, again, it crushed. We have, I think I have my master's right now in a PhD in the Sybil attack mechanisms that people use in trying to garner different rewards. But it was great that, tested us on different architectures and run it through. But we've had a lot of people come access and use it. But the main net itself is, it's weeks away now. Once the sale closes up, there's other than some little odds and ends, finalizing some agreements with our distribution and exchange strategy. Then the network itself is ready for public access soon. And so, testing on Tea.xyz now will help you out, but come join us if you're a dev afterwards. And then we're going to set up all the bounty type rewards platforms with our own repositories. We're going to be eating our own dog food there to make sure that we try to figure out what works well and what works best for us as we grow it out.
Nice, nice. And then to get to the juicy part, I'm sure people are curious about the token sale as well. What can you tell us in terms of how that's been going?
Yeah, I mean, every time we ask our community to show up, they show up. We've got a big community, and we did this. Yeah, we did this KYC attestation, zero knowledge proof experiment, and we were able to KYC attest over 177,000 people through a pretty complex little rigmarole that we had them jump through. So it's great to see them there, and they always show up, surprises us. It's great. It is a bottom up sale, so it started yesterday. We've driven through the levels and the things that we wanted to get to, and now what it is about is bringing on more people. It will kind of even out some of the differences in sales habits early on, but bringing more people into a wider net is what we intended. We really did this at a deep discount to our last investor round because we wanted this as a benefit for those in our community and those that wanted it to be with us early on. So it's been great, it's fantastic, really excited about it. Now we'll put some stuff out. It's going to be a really easy weekend for me because we're very happy about everything that's going on. But we've got 6 more days from this filming. From the time you watch this, from the time you watch this, this might be in the next over the next 24 hours. It ends on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. UTC. So if this interests you, yes, there'll be other ways as a developer to get involved. Especially if you have repositories that are, depended on by other tools, check us out there. But as a speculator or someone who wants to be a part of this community, et cetera, Thursday, 5 p.m. UTC is the final bell.
And then what's on the rest of your guys' horizon here in 2025 for T? I'm sure, beyond this, there's a lot. You mentioned mainnet and you meant a bunch of other things in terms of important updates, things that users, devs, should keep in mind. But what would you say is the most pressing, the most interesting, and something people should pay attention to?
Yeah, so we've built out infrastructure and we've got a lot of building to do on top of that infrastructure, right? And this is a permissionless network. So we're excited. We've got a bunch of great partners. This L2 will start. We've got Velodrome as a day zero partner, building out a DEX in our ecosystem that we've been working on with them that we're very excited about, which allows cross-chain assets from Hyperlane. So we'll have a nice bridge up to support some bridging quickly. And we've got some other exciting partnerships. Decent DAO as an organization and a group of individuals that I'm excited to help us experiment with on our DAO side. But we've got some great other things internally though, and we're building out an infrastructure part of this network, right? So an IPFS layer for now, the storage layer that's going to go on top of our network to allow us to distribute packages and then applications soon in a decentralized way as a part of the transactions on our network. It is a layer 2 custom op stack based network. So, we don't have full decentralization of the sequencer yet, but we'll have hopefully verifiers and validators soon. So those types of nodes could participate in that thing. And so we'll have some node betas and people participating that I think will happen shortly after launch. We have this secret weapon. So we have this new package manager called PKGX. This is built by Max Howell, creator of Homebrew. We call this Brew 2 for Web3 internally. Like this is a package runner. This is kind of a whole new style for runtime execution for packages that we're going to build out, more integration with the blockchain for the security features of compiling and putting together applications through this package runner. So that'll make things like running our nodes super easy and really secure, which is awesome. So we'll be excited to continue work on that. That's been now for about 3 years now. Worked on for about 3 years publicly. So check out PKGX if you're a dev. It's been used by a bunch of really great AI organizations, Hugging Faces, all over using PKGX, and we appreciate what they're showing us. But we'll work on that. Beyond that, this node network that will be implemented, Brew.fun. So we're going to be introducing a launchpad for verified open source. We're going to be kind of working with some of the repositories that register in our ecosystem and helping them understand how to launch community assets, community value assets for continued experimentation and economic lessons. So those are kind of the next things that I'm most excited about, man. But there's a lot of work to do.
Sounds like it. Sounds like a lot going on, but that's awesome. Any events or conferences? I know you mentioned Token. Where can people find you guys in person? Maybe get a chance to meet you guys.
So I've been traveling the world for blockchain since like 2015. Obviously I took a big break. I had a family in around COVID time, 2020, 2021. And so I've been kind of not traveling since then. I did a couple. I did something in Dubai recently. I did Satoshi Roundtable, and but this year I don't know. There's a FinOS open source financial conference in New York that I'm going to go try to step into, and had some great conversations with one of the members of the Linux Foundation, and hopefully we'll be connecting with them there. And so that's the next one that I'll be at. As far as other conferences, we're not going to be Korea Blockchain Week right now going on. Wish I was there. Love it. Won't be, but we have friends with a lot of people in the industry will be around. We've got some people talking about us there, but none of the core team is going out. I think the rest of this year is going to be heads down. We'll start jumping out and about, or probably early next year.
Excellent. And then where can people go to get more information? Should they just go to the Tea website? Do you guys have like a blog or a Medium page? Do you have socials? Are you guys working on community, Discord, Telegram? Where can people kind of go to get everything?
So Tea.xyz has all the links to all our socials, everything else. My favorite parts of our socials are our X is fun. Again, these communities are Web3 communities, all different types of participants. Like I've got like kind of 7 different archetypes of like the type of people that show up, but we've got a good mix of all that on our Twitter, and it's getting better. I do a lot of the content, so I enjoy that part of it. But our Discord is good. A lot of different languages, a lot of different channels. A lot of people can find different parts of the community for themselves in there. Those are the 2 I'd suggest. Our Telegram exists, but I think it doesn't get as much. We don't just use it as often. It's got a lot of people, but we just don't use it as often. So I'd say Discord or Twitter, probably your best bets. But the website, just updated the website. I think we've laid out what it is really well, and I think people should start there.
Excellent. If anyone wants to connect with you, Tim, do you have an X or a LinkedIn, anything like that?
I do. LinkedIn, sure. I've got these things. I really don't do it as much. The trust layer on Telegram. That's something where at least people can get at me. I do have a LinkedIn. Probably needs to be updated on what I need to be doing here. My X, I have a bunch of like these anonymous accounts that I've been operating since like 2007. So I've never really been one to be on X. So Telegram and Discord, those are the 2 best spots, I'd say.
Awesome. Well, Tim, I appreciate the conversation today. It's been great learning a bit more about Tea and the problems that you guys are focused on solving around open source software development. The incentivization for devs, I think, is fantastic, and the way you guys incorporate them into participating with Tea, and also with the token sale. Continue to let me know how that's end up going, and beyond that for your guys's roadmap in 2025 as new developments come to light. Let me know. Always happy to have you guys back on and do another part of this episode. And if we're lucky enough, maybe we can meet up at one of these events sometime soon. I won't be able to make Token, unfortunately, but I'm sure there's some others in the future. would be great to do an in-person episode as well. So just keep me posted on what you guys are doing in terms of travel and events and stuff like that.
Where are you in the world?
I'm in Las Vegas.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll travel through that side of the world in not too long. Definitely in the fall time, I'll be rolling around LA and Vegas, et cetera. So I need to check out the Sphere. If you
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Definitely want to get to there, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me, and happy to be talking about this stuff anytime.
Of course. Take care. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk soon.